The rain hammered against the reinforced glass of St. Jude's Trauma Center like 1,000 tiny bullets. Inside, the air smelled of ozone, floor wax, and the metallic tang of dried blood. Stella adjusted her blue scrubs, her fingers trembling as she reached for a syringe. Dr. Eris Thorne, the hospital's rising star surgeon, slapped her hand away. "Keep those shaky claws off my tray, Stella. You're a liability in a level 1 trauma center. Go mop the hallway or something." The surgical team chuckled. They saw a quiet, 30-year-old nurse who flinched at loud noises and couldn't hold a scalpel without a tremor. They didn't see the muscle memory burned into her nerves from a decade in the sandbox. They didn't see the way her eyes mapped the room's exits every 5 seconds. Stella said nothing. She let the humiliation wash over her, a familiar cloak. Her hands didn't shake from fear. They shook from a neurological echo, the aftermath of a nerve agent exposure in a Damascus bunker that officially never existed. "Sorry, doctor," she whispered, her voice a low rasp. She stepped back into the shadows of the OR prep room. Thorne sneered, turning back to his patient, a high-profile senator undergoing a routine gallbladder removal. But tonight, nothing was routine. Stella's ears picked up a sound over the rhythmic beep of the vitals monitor. A heavy, rhythmic thud. Boots. Professional footfalls. 4 men. Suddenly, the red emergency lights pulsed. Code black. The intercom sputtered to life before dying in a screech of static. "Security to the West Wing. We have a—" The voice was cut off by a muffled pop, a suppressed 9mm. Stella's posture shifted. The tremor in her hand stopped instantly as she dropped into a tactical crouch. Thorne looked up, panicked. "What was that? Stella, check the door." Stella didn't move toward the door. She moved toward the oxygen manifolds. "Stay away from the glass, doctor," she commanded. Her voice was no longer a whisper. It was steel. The OR doors kicked open. 2 men in tactical gear, faces hidden by ballistic masks, stepped in. They weren't looking for drugs. They were looking for the senator. Thorne froze, his hands in the air, trembling worse than Stella ever had. One gunman raised his weapon toward the patient. "Wait," Stella said, stepping into the fluorescent glare. The gunman turned, eyes narrowing behind his mask. He saw a small, shaky nurse. He made the mistake of dismissing her. The gunman laughed, a dry, metallic sound. "Back off, sweetheart. This doesn't concern you." He adjusted his grip on the HK-VP9, finger tightening on the trigger. He was a professional, but he was arrogant. He didn't notice Stella's feet were braced, her center of gravity perfectly aligned. "You're standing on a wet floor," Stella said calmly. The gunman glanced down for a fraction of a second. That was all she needed. Stella didn't use a gun. She grabbed a heavy stainless steel kidney dish from the tray and hurled it. It caught the first man in the throat. As he gasped, she lunged. She didn't punch. She used a palm strike to his chin, snapping his head back, then grabbed his wrist, twisting the weapon away with a sickening crack of bone. The second gunman fired. The bullet shattered a saline bag next to Thorne's head. Thorne screamed, diving under the operating table. Stella rolled behind a heavy lead-lined X-ray shield. She didn't panic. She counted the shots. 2. He was suppressed, but the recoil was kicking high. "Stella, what are you doing?" Thorne shrieked from the floor. She ignored him. She grabbed a bottle of 90% isopropyl alcohol and a roll of gauze. She threw the bottle into the air. The gunman tracked it, firing instinctively. The bottle exploded in a mist of flammable vapor. Stella sparked a surgical cauterizing tool she snatched from the tray. A wall of fire erupted between her and the shooter. It was a distraction, not a kill shot. In the chaos of the flame, she moved like a ghost. She appeared behind the second man, slamming a heavy defibrillator paddle against his temple. She didn't clear the charge. She just used the weight. He went down like a sack of stones. Silence returned to the OR, save for the hum of the ventilator. Stella stood over the 2 unconscious men, her hands beginning to twitch again, the adrenaline hitting the old nerve damage. She quickly stripped the gunmen of their comms units. "Thorne, get up," she snapped. "Lock the door, use the manual override." You killed them, Thorne stammered, looking at the blood on Stella's scrubs. They're breathing. For now, Stella said, putting the comms piece in her ear. She heard a voice crackle. Team 1, report. Is the senator neutralized? She looked at the monitor. The senator's heart rate was spiking. She wasn't just a nurse. She was the only thing keeping this hospital from becoming a morgue. I'm calling the police, Thorne hissed, his phone shaking in his hand. You're a freak, Stella. You attacked them. You probably brought them here. Stella didn't blink. She grabbed Thorne's phone and crushed the screen with the base of the stolen handgun. The cell towers are jammed, Doctor. Look at your bars. They've taken the comms hub in the basement. If you call for help through the internal lines, you're just signaling the rest of the team where we are. Thorne backed away, his face pale. Who are you? The person making sure you don't die, Stella replied. She checked the hallway through the small reinforced window. The lights were flickering. The hospital was in total lockdown, but it wasn't the hospital's security in control. It was an extraction team. She noticed something on the neck of the fallen gunman, a small tattooed mark of a golden scales tipped to one side. The Libra Syndicate. Not just mercenaries. These were cleaners for the deep state. This wasn't a kidnapping. It was a sanctioned hit. Suddenly, the heavy OR doors groaned. Someone was trying to override the lock from the outside. We have to move the senator, Stella said. He's mid-surgery. We can't move him, Thorne protested. If we stay, he's a target. If we move, he has a chance. Stella grabbed a portable oxygen tank and hooked it to the senator's line. She started unlocking the gurney brakes. The door burst open. It wasn't the gunman. It was the hospital's head of security, Miller, followed by 2 guards. Freeze, Miller shouted, aiming a taser at Stella. He looked at the gunman on the floor, then at the gun in Stella's hand. Miller, thank God, Thorne cried. Stella went crazy. She's part of it. She attacked these men. Stella narrowed her eyes. Miller wasn't looking at the gunmen with surprise. He was looking at them with disappointment. He wasn't here to save them. He was here to finish the job. Nurse Stella, Miller said, his voice cold, I always knew you were hiding something. Give me the gun. You're under arrest for the assault of these contractors and the endangerment of a senator. Stella realized the frame-up was already in motion. The CCTV wouldn't show the gunman attacking. It would show her with a weapon. She looked at Miller's belt. He wasn't wearing his standard-issue radio. He was wearing the same encrypted comms as the hitmen. You're wearing the wrong radio, Miller, Stella said, her voice dropping an octave. Miller's expression hardened. Kill her. Make it look like she resisted. The 2 guards lunged. Stella didn't wait. She shoved the heavy surgical gurney, senator and all, directly into the first guard. The 500-pound mass of metal and patient pinned him against the wall. She spun, using the momentum to swing the portable oxygen tank like a mace. The heavy cylinder caught the second guard in the ribs, the sound of breaking bone echoing in the sterile room. Miller fired his taser. Stella twisted, the barbs catching her thick fleece vest instead of her skin. She ripped the wires out and dove for the floor as Miller pulled his sidearm. Tethny, get down! She yelled. But Tethny was already running, straight toward Miller. I'm on your side. Just let me go. Miller didn't hesitate. He backhanded Tethny with the grip of his pistol, sending the surgeon sprawling. Nobody leaves until the senator is dead. Stella kicked a rolling stool into Miller's shins, tripping him. She didn't want a gunfight. The oxygen tanks in the room made it a powder keg. She scrambled to the wall and hit the emergency fire suppression override. A thick cloud of chemical foam exploded from the ceiling, obscuring everything in white. In the blindness of the foam, Stella was in her element. She moved by sound and memory. She found Miller, grabbed his wrist, and applied a pressure point that forced his fingers to go numb. The gun clattered to the floor. She followed up with a knee to the solar plexus. Miller wheezed, collapsing. Stella grabbed the senator's gurney and Tethny by the collar. Move. Now. Into the service elevator. Why are you helping me? Teffney sobbed, wiping blood from his lip. I was horrible to you. Because I'm a nurse, Stella said, shoving him into the elevator. And you're still my responsibility. As the elevator doors closed, Stella looked at the CCTV camera in the corner of the lift. She knew what the security room was seeing. They were seeing a Shaky nurse kidnapping a senator and a top surgeon. The narrative was being written by the villains. She needed to change the script. The service elevator stalled between the 3rd and 4th floors. The power had been cut. "We're trapped," Thorne whimpered. "We're going to die in a box." Stella ignored him, looking up at the ceiling hatch. Her hands were vibrating again, a frantic rhythm against her thighs. She took a deep breath, centering herself. Inhale for 4, hold for 4, exhale for 8. The tactical breathing of the ghosts, her old unit. "Hold this," she commanded, handing Thorne a penlight. "What are you doing?" "Opening a door." Stella stood on the handrails and pushed the ceiling panel aside. She hauled herself up into the dark, greasy elevator shaft. The smell of burnt oil and cold air rushed in. She reached down and pulled Thorne up with a strength that didn't match her slight frame. "The senator!" Thorne gasped. "We can't leave him." "We aren't." Stella had already looped a high-strength nylon medical strap around the gurney and the elevator's internal pulley. It was a makeshift hoist. Using the elevator's manual brake release, she slowly lowered the gurney to the 2nd-floor landing while they were perched above it. "Why is the hospital doing this?" Thorne asked, his voice trembling in the dark. "It's not the hospital. It's the basement. Level B4. It's not on the public blueprints. It's a black site storage for illegal pharmaceutical trials. The senator was going to blow the whistle tomorrow. This surgery was the perfect cover for an accidental death on the table." Thorne's eyes widened. I saw those files. I thought they were just old archives." "They're evidence," Stella said. They reached the 2nd floor, the oncology ward. It was eerily quiet. Stella cracked the door open. The hallway was empty, but the CCTV cameras were moving, tracking. They were being hunted by the eye in the sky. Stella pulled a small mirror from her pocket, a diagnostic tool, and angled it to see around the corner. 2 men in scrubs, but wearing combat boots, were patrolling. They were checking every room. "They're cleaning the floor," Stella whispered. "Thorne, I need you to be brave for exactly 60 seconds. I need a distraction." "Me? No, I can't." "Do you want to live to see another name on your research paper?" Stella looked him in the eye. "Then scream. Scream like you're dying." Thorne let out a blood-curdling shriek. The 2 nurses in combat boots bolted toward the sound. As they rounded the corner, Stella dropped from a ceiling pipe she had climbed. She landed on the first man's shoulders, her legs locking around his neck in a choreographed wrap. She used his momentum to slam him into the wall. The second man pulled a knife. Stella grabbed a lead apron hanging from an X-ray room door and used it as a shield. The knife thudded into the heavy lead. She wrapped the apron around the man's arm, trapping the blade, and delivered a precise strike to his temple with her elbow. Both men were down. Stella panted, her hands shaking violently now. She looked at her palms. They were red. "Stella!" Thorne ran out. "You did it!" "Keep moving," she breathed. She led them toward the morgue. It was the only place with a direct laundry chute to the basement. As they entered the cold, stainless steel room, the lights hummed. The temperature dropped. Stella headed for the back, where the oversized industrial chutes were located. "Wait," Thorne said, stopping by a body bag on a gurney. This is the patient I lost last week, Mr. Gable. They said he had a stroke." Stella glanced at the tag. "Check his IV site." Thorne unzipped the bag with shaking fingers. He gasped. "There's no puncture, but there's a small blue bruise at the base of the skull. That's an air embolism injection. A professional kill." "The hospital is a graveyard for their failures," Stella said. Suddenly, the morgue doors hissed open. A man in a sharp gray suit stepped in, flanked by 4 heavily armed mercenaries. He wasn't wearing a mask. He didn't need to. He planned on there being no witnesses. "Nurse Stella," Vance said, clapping slowly. "Or should I call you the Wraith? We thought you died in the Levant. Imagine my surprise when our facial recognition flagged a shaky nurse in a suburb hospital." Stella pushed Thorne behind her. "Vance, I should have known you were behind the Libra Syndicate." "The senator has to die, Stella. It's business. But you? You're a bonus. The agency still has a bounty on your head for the files you stole." "I didn't steal them. I secured them, and they're sitting in a dead man's switch. If my heart stops, the world sees everything." Vance smiled. "Then we won't kill you. We'll just break you until you give us the codes." "Kill the doctor," Vance ordered casually. "Keep the girl." The mercenaries raised their suppressed rifles. Stella didn't reach for a gun. She reached for a valve on the wall labeled liquid nitrogen. With a brutal wrench, she snapped the handle. A high-pressure blast of cryogenic gas roared into the room. The mercenaries fired blindly, the bullets hitting the steel cadaver drawers. Stella grabbed Thorne and the senator's gurney, shoving them into the walk-in freezer. "Stay in there! Don't open it until I say!" she yelled. The morgue was now a whiteout of freezing mist. Stella moved through the fog like the wraith Vance had called her. She didn't use fire now. She used the cold. She grabbed a surgical bone saw, the manual kind, a thin wire of diamond-edged steel. She felt the vibration of a mercenary nearby. She looped the wire around his rifle barrel, jerking it upward as he fired. The muzzle flash illuminated the room for a split second. Stella used that flash to drive a heavy trocar, a thick, pointed medical instrument, into the man's tactical vest. It didn't pierce the plate, but the force cracked his ribs and sent him reeling into a rack of chemicals. A second mercenary swung his buttstock. Stella ducked, swept his leg, and slammed his head into the edge of a steel table. Vance was backing away, coughing in the nitrogen cloud. "Find her! She's just one woman!" "I'm not just a woman," Stella's voice echoed from the mist, seemingly coming from everywhere. "I'm the reason your syndicate lost the Eastern Bloc." She appeared behind the third mercenary. Instead of a strike, she jammed a syringe into the gap in his armor, the neck. It was a heavy dose of vecuronium, a paralytic. He collapsed in seconds, unable to move a muscle. Only Vance and one guard remained. The nitrogen was clearing. Stella stood in the center of the room, her scrubs torn, her hands perfectly still. The adrenaline had finally overridden the tremor. She looked lethal. Suddenly, the main doors of the morgue were blown off their hinges by a flashbang. "FBI, drop the weapons!" "Secure the suspect," a voice barked. A tall man in a dark trench coat walked through the ranks. Agent Ward. Stella recognized him instantly. He was the one who had sold her unit out in Damascus. "Well, well," Ward said, looking at Stella. "The rogue agent emerges. Planting bodies in a hospital, Stella? That's low, even for you." Vance adjusted his suit, a smug grin returning to his face. "Agent Ward, thank God you arrived. This nurse, she went on a rampage. She's holding Senator Higgins hostage in that freezer." Ward nodded to his men. They moved toward the freezer. "Don't," Stella said. "If you open that door, you're confirming your involvement in a domestic assassination attempt." "Who's going to believe you, a disgraced operative with a history of mental instability? Look at your hands, Stella. They're shaking again." It was true. The temporary stillness had passed. Stella's fingers were twitching. "The CCTV footage," Stella said. "I know you've edited it, but you forgot the backup server in the pediatric wing. I rerouted the feed 5 minutes ago." Ward's smile flickered. "Search the pediatric wing. Find that server." Too late, Stella said. It's already uploaded to a secure cloud, and the password isn't mine. It belongs to the director of the CIA. The room went dead silent. Vance looked at Ward. Ward looked at the camera in the corner. "You're bluffing," Ward hissed. "Am I? Check your phone, Ward. You should have a notification by now." Ward pulled out his device. His face went gray. It wasn't a notification from the CIA. It was a live feed of the morgue, broadcast to every major news outlet in the country. Stella hadn't just uploaded it, she had streamed it. "You bitch!" Ward snarled, reaching for his gun. "Drop it, Ward!" A new voice boomed from the doorway. A man in a military uniform, 4 stars on his shoulder, stepped in. General Marcus Thorne, the senator's brother and Stella's former commanding officer. The general didn't look at the FBI. He didn't look at Vance. He looked directly at Stella. "Stand down, Agent Ward," the general commanded. "Your jurisdiction ended the moment you targeted a sitting senator and a member of my former command." Ward's hand stayed on his holster. "She's a traitor, General. She's dangerous." "She's the only reason my brother is breathing," the general snapped. He turned to Stella. "Report, Sergeant Major." Stella stood tall, ignoring the tremor in her hands. 2 hostiles neutralized in OR4, 3 in the morgue. Evidence of illegal human testing found in level B4. Senator Higgins is stable but needs immediate post-op care. The general nodded. "Secure the facility. Arrest everyone in a suit." The real FBI, the ones not on Ward's payroll, moved in. Ward and Vance were tackled and cuffed. The guards were stripped of their weapons. Thorne stumbled out of the freezer, shivering and holding a surgical tray like a shield. He saw the general and nearly fainted. "General, your brother, Stella saved him. She's a monster. A wonderful, terrifying monster." The general walked over to Stella. He looked at her shaking hands. "The damage hasn't healed, has it?" "No, sir," Stella said. "But it didn't stop me." "I heard they were calling you a liability here," the general said, glancing at Thorne. Thorne looked at the floor, his face burning with shame. I didn't know. I was an idiot." "You were a distraction," Stella said, a small, dry smile tugging at her lips. "And you played your part perfectly." As the senator was wheeled out by a fresh medical team, the general turned to Stella. "The agency wants you back, Stella. We can fix the records, we can give you a lab, a team, the best treatment." Stella looked around at the cold, fluorescent hospital. She looked at her scrubs stained with blood and foam. "I like it here, General. People underestimate the quiet ones. It gives me a clear line of sight. But you can't stay a nurse, not after this." "Watch me," Stella said. The next morning, the sun broke through the rain clouds over the city. The news was a whirlwind of headlines. Conspiracy at St. Jude's. Senator saved by mystery nurse. FBI agent charged with treason. Stella sat in the break room, a cup of lukewarm coffee between her hands. They were shaking again, the rhythmic vibration of a cold engine. Dr. Eris Thorne walked in. He looked different. The ego was gone, replaced by a haunting hollow in his eyes. He set a new box of high-end surgical gloves on the table in front of her. "Stella," he said softly. "Doctor, I spoke to the board. I told them you were the one who led the evacuation. I told them I wouldn't work here unless you were promoted to head of trauma nursing." Stella took a sip of her coffee. "I don't want the promotion, Thorne. I like the night shift. It's quieter." Thorne nodded, not pushing it. "The general left this for you." He handed her a small, sealed black envelope. Stella waited until he left to open it. Inside was a single burner phone and a photograph. The photo showed a man she thought was dead, the man who had ordered the hit in Damascus. He was standing in front of a familiar building, the hospital's main entrance. The phone buzzed. A text message appeared. They didn't just come for the senator, Stella. They came for the prototype in the basement, and they're not finished with you. Stella looked up at the CCTV camera in the break room. She knew someone was watching. She didn't flinch. She didn't hide. She simply raised her coffee cup in a silent toast. The shaking in her hands stopped. She wasn't just a nurse. She wasn't just a soldier. She was the ghost in the machine, and the war was just beginning. If this story gave you chills, subscribe for more Code Black cases. Comment silent if you knew Stella was the goat from the start. New episode drops Friday. Don't blink.